Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining for another discussion. I wanted to talk about legal tender and lawful money. This is a subject that seems to continuously come to my inbox. I've talked about this many of times, including some of the mentors that I have come across and mentioned. They've talked about it as well, but it is still a question that is on the minds of everyone, especially since the times that we live in. There's a lot of talk about this new digital currency. I've talked about that in the past, how that's nothing to fear, nothing to worry about. There are some steps that you can take to prevent some of the things that are going to unfortunately happen to a lot of people out there. And you can find that information on our website, the0%.net. But I always like to go back and bring up the issue or the conversation between the actual United States government versus a few individuals who had the very same question about legal tender. The question of, is there legal tender in circulation now? Or are we completely dried up of that and only using debt, circulating debt? And the answer is yes, both ways. It just depends on how you use what we call Federal Reserve notes. There are two sides to that Federal Reserve note. You've all seen it before. It says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. What does that mean? Public debt is the debt that you and I continuously engage in if we are utilizing the Social Security number, that personal guarantee. That is going to create an actual public debt. The private debt, let's say I wanted to obtain a loan without going to a National Association bank. I go to a hard money lender or a pool of investors. I know that they have the money. All they're going to do is require me to give them a copy of my credit report just to see my ability to repay. And they're going to ask for 20% down to secure the collateral. That is enough to get them to take all of the money to pay for the house, and I would just pay a private debt to them. The debt is not recorded or reported to my credit report under the Social Security name. So a lot of foreign nationals use that for private debt. Now, that's one side of it. The other side of it is lawful money versus legal tender. There is a difference. Right now, all of us are using the Federal Reserve note bills as legal tender. We're not using it as an actual note or lawful money. So if I were to share my screen and take you over to the actual Federal Reserve Bank's website, I believe you may be familiar with this, but this is within their current frequently asked questions. And they're talking about what is lawful money and how is it different from legal tender. So let's read. Lawful money is a term used in the Federal Reserve Act, the act that authorizes the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System to issue Federal Reserve notes. The act states that Federal Reserve notes shall be obligations of the United States and shall be receivable by all national and member banks and Federal Reserve banks, and for all taxes, customs, and other public dues. Now, when they mention all national and member banks and Federal Reserve banks, these are credit unions as well, and they are all governed by the 1863 National Bank Act. I always refer you guys to go down to Section 33 in that act and see how they have violated the act when it comes to your mortgages. I'll leave that as homework for you to do. 1863 National Bank Act, Section 33. Let's continue. It says, they shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand at the Treasury Department of the United States, in the city of Washington, District of Columbia, or at any Federal Reserve Bank. Now, where are they getting this language from to describe lawful money? That would be Title 12, USC 411. That's talking about the issuance to reserve banks. And as we go down, we see right here, it says, the said notes shall be obligations of national member banks and Federal Reserve banks. They shall be redeemed in lawful money, word for word. The actual public law is given right here. All right. So let's go back. It says the act did not, however, define the term lawful money, but up until 1913, that is the year when the Federal Reserve Act was enacted, the only currency issued by the United States that was legally recognized as lawful money was various issues of demand notes, subsequently known as old demand notes, and United States notes authorized by Congress during the Civil War. So what are those? Those are going to be your silver notes, your Treasury notes. I'm going to show you today how you can make a Treasury note so that way you can stop circulating the Federal Reserve bills, which is further creating the national public debt. If I hired you to do a service for me, such as groundskeeping or my roof, and you told me that the amount of money to do this job was $3,000, and I agreed to it, I signed some documentation with you, or I just look you in the eye and shake your hand, and I mean what I mean. You do the work, and then I pull out 3,000 Federal Reserve note bills. You accept it and you walk away. Did I pay the bill? No, I gave you 3,000 bills, an actual bill, as in I'm sitting at a dinner table and they bring me the bill, the invoiced bill. So no, in that sense, I did not pay for the service you provided me. On the other hand, if I gave you a Treasury note, then yes, I have paid it. And there is a way to actually take a bill and convert it into a Treasury note. This is the type of paper that we have to circulate in order to reduce the national debt and therefore decrease inflation. This is what we have to do. Before I show it, let's continue reading here and see this actual case that took place. Now, it says here, at the time, some currency was not considered legal tender, although it could be used by national banking associations as lawful money reserves. Thus, the term lawful money had a broader meaning than the term legal tender. In 1933, Congress changed the law so that all U.S. coins and currency, including Federal Reserve notes, regardless of when issued, constitutes legal tender for all purposes. Federal and state courts since then have repeatedly held that Federal Reserve notes are also lawful money. If we look at Malam versus the United States Court, 524 Federal 2D, 2nd District, 629 9th Circuit in 1974, is typical of the federal and state court cases holding that Federal Reserve notes are lawful money. In Malam, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit reviewed a judgment denying relief to an individual who sought to redeem a $50 Federal Reserve note bank or Federal Reserve Bank note in lawful money. So a young man or woman entered the court, put down $50 bill and said, in exchange, I want you to give me $50 in gold and silver. That's what's happening here. The United States tendered Malam $50 in Federal Reserve notes. But Malam refused the notes, asserting that the lawful money must be gold or silver. The Ninth Circuit, noting that this matter had been put to rest by the United States Supreme Court nearly a century before in the legal tender cases Juilliard versus Greenman, 110 U.S. 421, 1884, rejected this assertion as frivolous and affirmed the judgment. So the court is saying, if you give us a $50 Federal Reserve note, which is a bill, and we give you back the same thing, that is the very same thing as giving you gold and silver. That's what they're saying. Now, Malam did not understand that there are two sides to the Federal Reserve note. On the public side, it is a bill. On the private side, it is a Treasury note. Let's take a look. You've all seen this. This is at jmbullion.com, and I'm pulling up an older 1934 $5 Federal Reserve note that was issued out or circulated in Hawaii. What I want you to pay attention to is this language here. This is the language before the language you find today. It says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. See, the bills today, that's all it says. But before, it used to say this, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank. So with this note back in the day, you can take it and actually do what Malam was trying to do. Give a $5 paper and in return receive a $5 Buffalo bill or an American Eagle or whatever gold piece or silver that was equivalent back then. Actual precious metal for this piece of paper. Now, that was then. But since 1913, banks are not doing that anymore. Instead, they're leaving that up to you, the people. But the people are not educated to know how to use the other side of the Federal Reserve bill. Do you notice on this bill here, there is an L. It says Bank of San Francisco. This L, or this L and with serial numbers down below, is what is referenced to the actual lien that is placed on all the people who have Social Security numbers. These serial numbers here correlate with the serial numbers on the actual bills. And it also correlates to the serial numbers on the back of your Social Security card. This one says L. So if we go to the Federal Reserve Bank on cash operations, L is going to tell us we're dealing with San Francisco, California. If you have an F on the back of your Social Security card like I had, that means all of the money pertaining to that account is based on Atlanta, Georgia. There are 12. Okay, there are 12. So if you look at the back of your Social Security card, you'll see a letter followed by numbers. What matters is the letter Do not worry about the numbers. Do not play with those numbers. I do not want any of you to catch a charge. People have caught a charge messing with those numbers, trying to discharge. I don't recommend it. There is another way. And I will be showing how we have discharged auto loans, unsecured loans, student loan debt, mortgages, all of that stuff. So it's here for you to do the correct way, the lawful way. Do not mess with the numbers on the back of the Social Security card. Okay, so this is just a reference to know what this means. It pertains to the Federal Reserve Bank, and it also pertains to all of the members that are taking on the benefits and privileges of the United States. So if you have L, that is San Francisco, California. Now, how do you turn this Federal Reserve bill into a Treasury note, which gives you the same power as this note right here, having all of this language on it? Very, very simple. What can you use today where you can actually write language on a piece of paper and then take that piece of paper, give it to a seller of goods, and they accept it? What would that be? That would be a check. That would be a money order. That would be a cashier's check, traveler's checks. All of those can be considered a Treasury note if you convert. And the converting process just means exchanging Federal Reserve bills for a check, for a money order, for a cashier's check. When I get cashier's checks and I go into the bank, I tell them to write this information on the cashier's check. So that way, when I turn it in and it finally reaches its destination, let's say Progressive Insurance, they cash it. And by the time that paper gets to their bank cannot do fractional reserve banking, where they can't take $800 that's on the face of that cashier's check and say, okay, we'll put 10% readily available to the people, but the other 90% we'll go ahead and loan it out. They won't be able to do that. If you can reduce and stop fractional reserve banking, then the inflation drops dramatically. This is what you need to do. So if you get paid, I know it is convenient to accept automatic deposit, but that is going to further increase the debt because you're putting it in the bank's hands to do fractional reserve banking with your deposit. So instead, get paid by paper check. So that way you can do what you need to do with the language on the face of that check. Look at an example here. Let's say I have a bank account, Chase Bank. Instead of getting checks from them, because there is a limited amount of space on the checks. So instead, I'm going to make my own. I go to Staples, I get check paper, and I have a template here that you can use. Or you can make your own in any way possible. We are taking Federal Reserve bills and converting into a Treasury note. So therefore, I have the Treasury logo there. Right in the background, we have the Treasury address. We have the name of the trust at the top, followed by, you're going to put your full 98 number. That's your tax exempt number that you've accumulated, followed by the name of the trustee and a business address, preferably the address that is on file with your bank account at Chase. So we give it a check number, we give it the check date. Let's say I want to make this payable to Progressive Casualty Insurance Company for the standard monthly bill. Let's say it is for $844. We're not talking about discharge here. We're talking about paying a bill without further increasing the national public debt. That is what we're talking about here. Okay? So we write it out, $844.00. In the memo section, we're going to put payment for account, and then you put the account number. Now, I want you to notice this line here. Let's zoom in. About 400% there. You see, it's not an actual line. It's words. It's authorized person, authorized person, authorized person, authorized person, all the way down. And at the end, we have MP for microprint. If you were to go and obtain a checkbook from your bank, I guarantee you will see the very same thing. Just get a magnifying glass, go to that line where you sign, and you'll see its words, not a black line. So you have to make your check doable as they do, because they will scan it in. And if that's not there, it will not process. Now, here's the language that I'm able to put at the bottom. Redeemed in lawful money on demand at the Treasury Department of the United States in the city of Washington, District of Columbia, or at any Federal Reserve Bank. This right here removes, this is legal tender for all debts, public and private. It removes that. So now, all I do is get what's called the MICR bank font. And I found that it's really easy to do this with programs such as Pages on a Mac. You can do it in Microsoft Word. I do believe it's very, very difficult to do on Google Docs. So you want to have an actual program that you can pull up and pull this thing up every single time. This is a monthly basis thing. So you're going to put the social here with the proper quotations, the MICR banking font, followed by the actual account number, right? So in my example, we're using Chase Bank. So I contact Chase and say, what is your routing number? They give it to me, and then I put my checking number. And of course, you drop down and put the check number itself. Now, this number and this will change periodically. All right. Print this out on bank paper, go to Staples and find it. And then you will sign and send it off, and they will cash it. So what you've just done, you've accomplished reducing the national public debt, not adding to it, so you can help reduce the interest. Now, if the entire United States would do this very simple thing, if you are a true national of the country you were born in, or you are a national because you own property here within the United States of America and you want to do your part, this is your part. Pay your bills on time, the correct way if you're going to pay your bills. But if you're going to discharge, that's a different thing. We still can use this very same check here, but there's another way to do that under Title 31 USC 3113. Okay, there are specific routing numbers for that based on the Treasury. And then sometimes you can do it without a routing number. Okay. Just wanted to share this information with you all because there's a lot of inquiries coming in about what are we going to do about this banking situation. We are already in a Great Depression, the worst one that we've ever seen, worse than back in the 30s. All you have to do to find that out is to just look at the value of things. How much does it cost today to do something versus how much it cost way back then? If it is astronomical, which it is, that is what you call a Great Depression. And we are currently or continuously doing this to ourselves because we don't know this information and we're not applying it. Fractional reserve banking is a real thing, and this is what you must stop. All right? Stop circulating Federal Reserve bills, convert them into Treasury notes. You may also go to the post office, use a debit card, use actual cash. In exchange for a $5 fee, you will receive a money order and you would put the exact same language in the memo section. You get enough of these being circulated, watch how fast the gas prices drop, watch how inexpensive groceries will be. There's a lot that will be reduced. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. Please convert your fractional reserve bills, your Federal Reserve bills, to Treasury notes to reduce the national public debt. If you're going to pay the bills, pay them this way. All right, I'll see you in the next video.